Hi everyone, my name is Paige Fraser-Hoffman. I am a scoliosis advocate and professional dancer currently in The Lion King on Broadway. A little bit about my story. I started dance at the age of 4. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, and my parents put me in dance at the age of 4 at a local dance studio. And dance was just something I did for fun, I was very shy, so it was a place for me to kind of just meet people. And my mom said she always saw me singing around the house. So she was like, okay, we'll put you in dance and see if you like it. And I haven't stopped dancing since. So I started at a ballet studio. And then for high school, I got accepted into the Professional Performing Arts School in Manhattan, which is affiliated with the Alvin Ailey Dance School. And that was a really big accomplishment for me because up until that point, I was just training in ballet. So to be able to go to the Ailey School and learn various styles of dance, modern, jazz, African, hip hop, it was like, whoa, this is a lot more than I had been doing up until that point. And for me, my freshman year of high school was when I was diagnosed with scoliosis. So that was a big turning point for me. I remember going to the doctor's office and looking at my x-ray and being told that I had a spinal curvature. And as you can imagine, that's very, very hard to process at the age of 13. So thankfully I had my parents and we talked about it, and my dad said, let's find some options before we decide if we're going to operate, on my daughter. So my parents found a chiropractor in the city that had worked with other dancers. And then as I was informing my teachers at the Ailey studio, I found out one of my instructors, who was actually the program director of the school at the time, also had scoliosis. So that timing was pretty incredible, just that I would have someone to talk to and someone in the front of the room that had gone through what I was going through. So throughout high school, I saw a chiropractor. I wore 2 different back braces, one that I wore to school, which was a little smaller, and then one that I had to wear to bed, which was bigger. Both very uncomfortable. And the only time I felt free was when I went to dance, because I was able to take it off for those few hours when I was training. But there was a lot of growing pains that I had to go through, relearning my body. Dance is all about your anatomy and your placement. So having a rib sticking out and all these things that was happening to my thoracic spine and the growing that I was doing in high school, it kind of set me back a bit during my training. So I had to work really hard to stay up to par with my class. And there were definitely some frustrating moments where it was like, why is this happening to me? Again, it just felt like it came out of nowhere. And now I was dealt with these cards that I had to figure out how to push through, because I knew I wanted to be a professional dancer. And that focus, I think, is what kept me persistent and determined and willing to just try. So that was my high school experience. And then I got into college. I continued to dance in college. I went to Fordham University. In my senior year, I was offered a contract with Ailey 2, which is the second company to Alvin Ailey. So I toured internationally and domestically with Ailey 2. And after that, I got into a company in Chicago, Illinois named Visceral Dance. And I danced with them for about 6 years. And now I have transitioned to musical theater. So I've done West Side Story at the Lyric Opera, and now I'm currently in The Lion King on Broadway, which it's kind of interesting because Lion King is like one of the hardest shows on Broadway, I would say, because of the puppets that we have to wear. And I kind of laugh that I'm even in this show because of my situation, but I think the discipline that I gained through being a dancer has carried me through, and I am still very disciplined, and I do Pilates, I do gyrotonics, which a lot of people don't know about, but it's very good for the spine. Yoga, I still go to a chiropractor, I get massages all the time. So there's a lot of therapy and rehab that goes into maintaining my body so that I can be the best performer and stay injury free. That's a little bit about me. Oh, and I am the co-founder of the Paige Fraser Foundation, which my aunt Lesma Fraser founded, and it was inspired by my story with scoliosis. And we offer free art programming to the youth and now adults in the New York area. So it's been really great to be part of that nonprofit and see it grow. And one of the programs that I created is called Spine Series, and we offer it every June for Scoliosis Awareness Month. And we typically have 4 instructors teach, and the classes that they teach are focused in spinal care and spinal therapy. So it's free to the community, and it's been a great success. So yes, that's a little bit about me.
Hi, Paige. I really loved your story. I'm Allie. I'm 16 years old. I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was in 7th grade. I recently had my surgery like 2 years ago, so I'm a little bit newer to this, but I'm excited to see how this goes. So my first question is, what inspired you to co-found the Paige Fraser Foundation, and how does it aim to create a safer space for dancers with or without disabilities?
My aunt Lesma Fraser, she approached me about the vision that she had with creating a nonprofit. And of course, at first I did not want it named after me. That's a lot of pressure. But I listened to her thoughts on it and how much she was inspired by my perseverance as a young dancer, being from the Bronx, and her wanting to start this organization, this Bronx-based organization. And she wanted me to be the program director. So over the last 5 years, I've kind of grown with the foundation. I didn't go to school for nonprofit, so I actually signed up, and I'm getting my master's in arts and culture advocacy so I can better know the ins and outs of running a nonprofit and how to target certain audiences, demographics, all those logistics. So it's been a learning curve for me as a new board member of this organization. But my aunt, she's been a philanthropist. She's donated to many, many arts organizations over the years, not only supporting me, but other dance companies, and her experience with the medical field definitely contributes to what we're doing.
I feel that's so great that you're taking the next step to create that. My second question is, what message would you like to convey to people with scoliosis and anyone facing challenges in pursuing their dreams? I know you talked a lot about that in your story, so.
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give someone is if there's something that they are desiring, that they are dreaming of, to really just stay focused on that. Life will come with a lot of challenges, whether that's scoliosis diagnosis, having to have surgery, having to maintain your spine care, there's many challenges that will be thrown at you, and sometimes we have absolutely no control. But the thing that kept me grounded was my love for dance. And now as I'm getting older, my love for performing. So, I'm willing to do what I need to do to be able to do that, to do what I love. And I definitely think my focus and drive to kind of in a way prove doctors wrong is really what got me to where I am today, and I personally believe that anything is possible. We just have our unique ways of getting there. Everyone's journey is different. But I'm again very grateful that I just used it as fuel to achieve my dreams.
Well, that's the questions I have for you. I really find your story inspiring. So I'm just so thankful I got to interview you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina. I got diagnosed with scoliosis when I was, I believe, 12 years old. My curve is about 43 degrees, which so frightening to me because I'm also a dancer. So I felt like it was like the end of the world, especially being so young. It was so hard to process the fact that I could possibly get surgery. I went to physical therapy for a little bit and it ended up with me getting a VBT surgery, which I'm very grateful maintained my flexibility. So I have some questions for you, Paige. My first question is, so I read in your story a very cool phrase that I remembered, and it was movement and breath is healing. And I found that to be very vital as a dancer to hear. And my question was, did you ever feel the self-consciousness, anxiety about your appearance due to scoliosis? And if so, did breathing and movement help to relieve this anxiety?
Thank you for that question. I love that you're a dancer. Yeah, of course. I feel like I still to this day at times feel anxious about it or in my head about it. Because again, as dancers, you walk into, or when I walk into an audition or into the theater and I see other people who have straight spines, right? And I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's like, because their preparation for the show is different than what mine has to be. And that's just been what it's been for me since I was diagnosed at 13. I've just had to adapt different ways of warming up my body. A lot of times that starts with laying on the floor and finding breath, because especially now with musical theater, I'm dancing and singing at the same time. So the breath work is one of the biggest things I have to focus on. So I'm not breathing up here, I'm breathing in my belly. But I definitely think what helped me with that is as I've found community, I've met a lot of people with scoliosis. I've met opera singers with scoliosis. And that just kind of like switches my perspective immediately. Because I'm like, they have scoliosis and they're singing opera, So it helps to connect with people that are like you. And that kind of eases that anxiety and the insecurities that come with having this condition that can at times feel like we have to work harder, and it can be frustrating. It definitely was frustrating for me in my training years in high school and college. Especially with looking in the mirror and seeing one shoulder's higher and all these things that you kind of have to like adjust constantly. And as I got older, I've learned to just be and breathe. And one modality technique that has allowed me to do that is gyrotonic. I definitely suggest everyone with scoliosis look into that, but it's circular movements. It embraces breath and expansion in the body and length. And that's just like all the things that I feel like my spine loves. And that's why I named one of the programs at the foundation Dance is Healing, because dance to me, movement is healing. It should feel good. And that's what I always strive for, it to feel good in my body and to heal me of anything that I might be dealing with, stressful, anxious. Even when I'm on stage, just reminding that this is not only healing me, but hopefully someone in the audience.
I find it very beautiful that you found people around that have the same condition as you, and that is just amazing to have that community. So with that, my second question, I believe you touched upon it before, but it is, did anyone else also have scoliosis in Alvin Ailey, and did that make you feel less alone?
Well, my teacher, she was a program director. She had very severe scoliosis. So having her in the front of the room, I definitely think was like a blessing, because again, she was someone I could relate to, and she expressed the importance of building a strong core, all those things that we need to be able to turn, jump, and move quickly as a dancer, right? Moving quickly through space. It all stems from a strong abdominal muscle core. I had a friend in high school who also had scoliosis, but she was in a musical theater department. So we didn't really see each other at dance. But I always remember seeing her. She was so cool. She had red hair, and she was just like so unafraid. And I remember her wearing her back brace just like out in the open. And I used to hide mine underneath like, baggy shirts, or I would buy these like cute flowy tops that I could just hide my brace. But this particular student, she was just really like open about it and free, and it inspired me to also do that. So we were like buddies in high school with our back braces.
Thank you so much.
Hi guys, I'm Lindsay Ellingston. I had spinal fusion surgery when I was 13 years old. I'm 38 now. I'm a mom, a model, and an entrepreneur. And Paige, I really loved hearing your story and connecting with you. I was also a dancer. There's a lot of dancers in the room. Not at that level, but I was also a dancer, and I loved how good it made my body feel to move around, especially with scoliosis. So after hearing your story, one of my first questions I want to ask you is first, how big are your curves? Do you have 1 or 2 curves, and how big are they? And have you been able to maintain that level of curve through exercise?
Yeah, so I have a really severe curve. My thoracic, I believe, is 52. So it's there. It's funny though, because a lot of people they're like, you have scoliosis, and then when I turn around, they see it. So yeah, my main curve is in my thoracic. My upper and lower curves are very small. But what's so interesting is any pain or discomfort that I feel, it's usually in my low back. It's not ever in my thoracic, which is really interesting to me, but I've learned it's because of the compensating, and your low back just in general takes a lot of the weight and stress of life. And then when you add dancing on top of that, so I've had to spend a lot of time learning how to stabilize my pelvis and my sacrum, because if this is our sacrum, it should go like this, right? So with scoliosis, sometimes our sacrum is off. We have one leg that's longer or shorter. So I've had to learn how to balance out my pelvis, and a lot of that has come from like doing pelvic rocks on the floor, bridges, clams, all those strengthening exercises that kind of keep my pelvis area nice and strong and sturdy.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And that brings me to my next question, which is like, can you recommend some exercises for all of us that could help us like with that lower back pain or just with scoliosis in general?
Yes. One of the best things you can do with scoliosis is lengthening. Not at this apartment, but my last apartment, I was able to get like a door hanger, like things people do pull-ups with. And you can keep your feet on the floor and just hang. And the gravity just like it allows you to decompress. I'm not sure if with the surgery you still feel compression, but I know because I haven't had the surgery, compression is very common. And then also I'm in the Lion King dancing with puppets on, so it's just a lot of extra weight. So lengthening, and if you can't hang from like a door hanger, another good lengthening exercise is like a downward dog. And then child's pose, and really breathing and stretching out through your back and your upper neck. I'm trying to think. Bridges are really good. Pelvic rocks kind of let you know where in your low back if it's off. And then side bending. So for me, because my thoracic goes to the right, I bend and stretch the opposite way to open up the side that's tight. And I recommend doing a lot of these exercises with a mirror or recording yourself so you can kind of see which way your body needs it more, right? So like for me, bending to the left is not really beneficial because it just, it makes the curve more what it is versus bending the other way opens up that tight side. So a lot of like spending time just understanding your body and understanding your curves. Sometimes if I'm really stressed out and I feel like I'm not breathing well, I lay on my back and I kind of pad the areas where it feels where it's touching the floor. So to help derotate. Trying to think. Yeah, those are some good ones to start with.
That all sounds so good. I need to do that tonight. And my last question is just, so many of us are diagnosed when we're really young. So any words of encouragement for young boys or girls, like first hearing the diagnosis and going through bracing or spinal fusion?
I think, it's one of those things you have to obviously like face it and like take it in and take the time to like process what you've been told, right? Because it's traumatic. For me, I was fine up until 13, so it was very life-changing for me. And it's okay to cry, it's okay to be frustrated. Even still sometimes I'm like, oh, this made things so much harder than I wanted it to be. But then I have to remember, like, I'm inspiring others and letting others know that, like, it's still possible to have a career with this spinal condition. So definitely just leaning on your community. Right now, we have the benefit of social media, which when I was 13 was just starting, but like, hashtag scoliosis was not a thing, right? Now we have the community. We have, sessions like this where you can talk to people and know you're not alone. And I think that's the best thing, is leaning on people that understand. And that was one of the beautiful things about the pandemic, is able to like reach out to doctors in Europe and like ask them questions about scoliosis, and how to like open up my tight side and how to alleviate pain, and using my resources. So I definitely think remembering that you're not alone, even though it feels heavy and it feels daunting, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and really finding those things that bring you joy, whether that's bike riding or jogging or swimming. There's so many things that you can still do to stay active, because one of the worst things you can do with scoliosis is not move, because things get stiff. I even feel it when I'm not active and I've had time off from work, everything just locks up. So moving is so important, even if it's a 15-minute walk, just doing something to let your body stay in movement and breath. But it's definitely not the end of the world, even if it feels like it. And finding those things that bring you joy is very, very important.
Thank you so much. That was so helpful.
Hi, Paige. Thank you so much for sharing. It really sounds like your determination and resourcefulness led to so much success for you. So congratulations. My name is Alyssa. I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was 15, and I had a spinal fusion when I was 19. But now I am teaching and coaching dance up in Washington. So another dancer on board. So my first question for you is, obviously you're extremely active in your daily life, and I can imagine while on tour. So do you still experience pain related to your scoliosis? And if so, what is your mindset like when this occurs? And has that kind of initial frustration following your diagnosis dissipated?
Yeah, I any pain that I feel from my scoliosis, I personally think is when I'm dormant. If I have like 3 weeks off or 4 weeks off, or like during the pandemic, that was the most pain I felt because I was not moving as much. And that's what made me develop Spine Series, because I was getting on Zoom with people in Europe and the US, asking them to just basically help me stay in shape. And there was a lot of dancing and yoga in my living room because I just could not move. And I, with dance, of course, there's little injuries and things that happen. And the main thing that I deal with is low back. If my low back is fatigued, I'll get some pain in my like piriformis, which then informs me that I need to get a massage, because piriformis pain is usually like spasms. And that means things are overworking and I need to get a massage and take a day or two off from the show. Because again, with musical theater, we're doing 8 shows a week. So it's very intense. It's one day off, 8 shows a week, we're athletes, at the end of the day. So I've had to learn how to listen to my body and not try to be a people pleaser. And if something hurts, I honor that and I do what I need to do. And I also take a lot of Epsom salt baths to just relax any muscles that might be fatigued. Sorry, what was your other question?
Oh, just what's your mindset when your pain occurs? And then do you feel like your initial frustration from your diagnosis is kind of dissipated, like you've accepted it now?
Yeah, I've definitely accepted it now. I mean, I'm 32 years old and I've accepted that this is the body that I was given, and my testimony has inspired people and has connected me with people. So it's really a beautiful thing at this point. My frustrations usually come from just like, again, when I'm feeling like some pain and I have to feels like I have to just change my whole schedule for the week to get to the chiropractor and get a massage and try to fit all of these things in an already demanding schedule. So that's more so when things feel a little bit frustrating, but I'm grateful that I have the tools and I know how to address what my body needs.
Yeah, that awareness component is huge, huge.
It is because people will say, oh, this is hurting, and some have no idea what to do about it, and they either take some pills or they take pain medicine, and I'm very grateful that throughout the years I know what works for me, and that came with a lot of trial and error. And I was on tour with Lion King before they moved me to Broadway. And that came with its own issues because in every city I had to find a chiropractor. Sometimes you don't like the chiropractor or the massage therapist. It's a lot of trial and error. But I looked at it as a way to learn what my body liked, what type of doctor I wanted to see. So I was able to be more specific when I moved back to New York in terms of who I went to and the energy that I felt. It's a lot about energy and people that really care to listen to what you're telling them and are honestly, they're genuinely trying to help you. It's a partnership, I always say my massage therapist here has healing hands. And I'm grateful I found her.
No, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you've found so many resources, which brings me to my second question for you. You spoke a little bit about how you found the joy in dedicating your health to healing and that it's just so important. And you've also mentioned several types of body conditioning. So what would you say is your favorite and what do you like most about it?
My favorite is gyrotonic. Everyone, please look it up after this session. It's so good for you. It's all about spiral movements, breath, and expansion. It's similar to Pilates, but not as rigid. Pilates, I feel like, is very linear, and you don't do as much twisting. Believe it or not, people say with scoliosis, you shouldn't twist. Again, refer to a doctor, but for me, I have found that derotating my spine helps me to get out any tightness and kinks, but derotating in a mindful way. Which, what do I mean by that, right? Really understanding your curves, right? So knowing that what you do to one side is not going to be the same on the other side. It shouldn't be the same because we're not balanced. So again, a lot of time has been dedicated to me asking questions, speaking to specialists, speaking to people who specialize in Schroth and yoga for scoliosis and Pilates for scoliosis, and kind of like making my own book that I refer to and the things that I know help. So it really is about just being dedicated to understanding your body.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great questions, you guys.
Hi, my name is Courtney. It's so nice to meet you, Paige, and everybody else. I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was in middle school, and then I didn't get spinal fusion surgery until I was a junior in high school. So now I'm 25, so it's about 8 years now. So been doing good so far. I am joining the dancer club. I was also a dancer. So actually, I have a dancer-related question for you. I was surprised with all my exercising and all the muscle groups that I had with my own back through dance that I couldn't keep my alignment with just basic dance. So with all the scoliosis type of exercises that you do you find that it works different muscle groups than just basic like regular ballet and everything else like that?
Yeah, I definitely think, let me answer this and let me know if I'm answering it the way you want. So various styles of dance target different muscles. I started with ballet at the age of 4, which is like, in my opinion, the most strict technique, because it's, first position, fifth position, you're like doing all these things with your body that many bodies shouldn't be doing. Like fifth position is not normal, but we're doing it, right? It's the foundation, as many would like to say, for dance. And then when I went to high school and tried African and modern and found a little more freedom in movement, that worked a different type of muscle group, because with modern dance, it's very grounded. So you're using different muscles than with ballet, where they want everything long and pulled upright, right? You go to the ballet, they're very upright. And then modern dance is more grounded. So I had to find ways to, all while I was dealing with scoliosis, find ways to find that versatility in my body. And I feel like throughout my career, I've always been like, people say, oh, you should be a ballerina. And then I go to a ballet school and they're like, oh, you should be a modern dancer. So I've always kind of been in this like in between space, and I've accepted that. That just means my training is very good and it covers all the bases. But dance, yes, you're accessing muscles, you're using your glutes, you're using your core, you're using your back muscles. But then when you do things like gyrotonics and yoga and Pilates and floor bar, those I feel like get those baby muscles. They get the muscles that we sometimes forget to activate when we're dancing, because it's very easy, especially as a professional, to kind of cheat. You learn the things that help you get through a show, but like Pilates gyro, it's like very humbling for me, because I'll leave those sessions very sore because I'm using different muscles that I might be neglecting when I'm dancing. So that's why that maintenance is very important. Even if you're not a dancer, those baby muscles are what get fired. So when you walk, when you jog, when you swim, those are things that you need to fire up and get you through. So it's really important to, if you're dancing, make sure that you're doing that outside training and wellness.
That's awesome to see like the breakdown of everything. Like typical dancers, you know that ballet is number one, but it's also interesting to see your different perspectives of how different dance affects your body, and that focusing on your spine in specific stretches is really smart to do and awesome to see. My second question for you is that if they had back when you were 13, right, when you got scoliosis, some of the procedures they have today, would you have chosen a different path, or would you stay on the same one you are today?
You know, I really don't know. At the end of the day, like, I was 13, so I think the decision was really my parents. Because if they would have said yes to surgery, that's what I would have had to do. But I feel like with the way things are now, yes, I probably would have been more open to it. I was just worried then that if I got the surgery, my range of motion would be gone, you know, and there was not much information out there for us to kind of gauge. We didn't know anyone else with scoliosis. We didn't have resources like the internet to look this up and like ask people these questions. So we were going into it very blindly, and my parents knew how much I wanted to dance professionally. So I think their thought was, let's see how the back bracing goes. If it doesn't progress, then we're in the clear. If she's not complaining of any pain, we're in the clear. And thankfully, I did not have any pain and I did not see any progression. So that was just kind of what it was. And then they said, you know, when you get older, then you can make that choice for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome for you to be an advocate as well, because of situations like you had where you couldn't find anybody. So there's probably so many young kids out there, or even adults, that really look up to you as a form of inspiration and also advice as well. So that's really cool that you are doing this. Thank you so much for telling your story and answering my questions. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best of success with continuing to be an advocate and your programs and everything.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for your incredible questions. Some of the questions I hadn't been asked before, so it was really nice to think about that in a deeper way and really talk with others that have the same condition as me. And again, you know, something we have in common is we are not allowing this to hold us back, right? And just remembering the importance of community. And I'm here. If you ever have any other questions, please keep in touch with me. I am more than happy to also record myself doing some of the exercises that I spoke about, because I know a lot of times seeing it helps, having that visual. So I definitely appreciate you guys and the questions that you brought to me today. And thank you for having me. Thank you.